myself clicking join and clearing my throat and like you join before you think you joined. That's a great way to get people away.
Okay, it is 5 o'clock and we're going to call to order our work session for April 14th, 2025. We have two items on the agenda today. Item number one is Go Polk City Development Survey discussion, and we're going to turn it over to Stacy. Hello.
Well, hello. Thank you guys for having me do this. So I was excited to get the results out to all of you. I emailed you some things earlier just so, it wasn't very much time because I stressed out about this PowerPoint all day, but here we are. Okay, so the survey was sent out to everybody in our database that owned a storefront in town or had done development work, things like that. So we had 37 people start the survey. Only 5 people had finished it. I did take several phone calls about it and had a lot of good conversations. Some people were hesitant to fill it out just because they were like, if I can't stay anonymous, in that kind of nature, just by talking about things that they've done here in town. So they were a little bit worried about that, but they were willing to give good feedback. So overall, I think that it went pretty well. This response count was low, but I think the insights were still strong, consistent, actionable. People that did fill it out, 50% of them were business owners and managers, and then the other 25 and 25 were commercial developer and residential developers. Out of the people that responded, 2 people had experience outside of Polk City, and the remaining 3 had only had experience in Polk City. So I just thought that was kind of interesting too. Maybe. No, there, it's probably gonna go 5 slides forward now, sorry. When they completed it, what did supporting economic development mean to them? 25% thought it meant expanding job opportunities in town. 19% were at attracting more businesses, increasing tourism and visitors, and then ensuring the benefits of growth were shared evenly. 12% thought it was growing in a way that fits Polk City. And 6% was encouraging more people to move to Polk City. Overall, the results from the whole survey, so that we don't go through every little detail of it, which I did send you guys the summary of it, so you can flip through that and ask me any questions that you might have too. The top priorities that kind of came out throughout the survey were reducing the cost of doing business, creating more business-friendly environment, improving communication and consistency, addressing permitting and regulatory burdens, and then expanding local business support services. The main reason that people picked to invest in Polk City was the strong profit potential, favorable demographics and population growth, and then personal connections. So several of the people that developed here that completed the survey also live in Polk City and wanted to see it do well. The top challenges that came out, 100% of the people who filled out the survey experienced unexpected costs due to regulatory or permitting issues. 100% cited poor communication or just mixed messaging. 80% mentioned slow government processes, and 80% felt there was a lack of support from local businesses. The main concerns that kind of came out of that were just like code versus engineering requirements, and then the Tree City policies were sometimes in some situations kind of a lot. So just something to look at. What they thought Polk City was doing well. Local businesses, the local business community is strong, collaborative, and invested with each other. Polk City has a growing demographic and small town charms. People want to be here. The zoning updates and the exploration of higher density development shows some initiative, and just putting out this survey made people feel like the city has a willingness to listen and adapt. Some ideas that came from this, which are just from conversations and then kind of what we pulled throughout it. were to like improve communication and clarity. And these were just things that were thrown around, so some of them might not even be possible, right? So appoint a city staff liaison for business development. Publish clear visual permitting guidelines and timelines. Potentially hold quarterly developer or business roundtables. And these weren't all something that like just the city would do. It's something Go Polk City can also, of course, should be doing or helping with too. Look into offering more incentives or communicating the incentives that are currently offered more clearly. Streamlining processes, so revisit the code versus engineering requirements if there's some kind of miscommunication there somewhere. Just kind of looking at those ahead of time. Consider allowing developer chosen vendors for traffic studies. A couple people had mentioned that it would just be nice if they could be on their own timeline or be like saying, hey, if we want to have this done, we want to, push it forward faster or however that works. Revisit ordinances and cost drivers. So review the tree city requirements. I wasn't familiar with those, so I don't even know if that's a possibility, but something that people had brought up. Maybe audit the permitting process for inefficiencies. And look into the architectural requirements in Polk City versus cities of similar size. When this came up, people said that Polk City tend to be a little higher on their architectural requirements, for example, like stone on a building. But what they had said is like, yes, it's higher and it costs more up front, but the end result is really nice and they liked it, so they didn't really know if it was really not really something to complain about, but in some situations, it's a cost burden.
I will just real quick.
Yep, go for
I
it.
still like the feedback, so it's something for
Yeah.
us to consider, react to, so I thank you for that feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. Marketing Polk City as a family and business friendly town. So launching a small business welcome kit or, where we talk about incentive programs or doing things like that. Highlighting local businesses and signage. That was something a lot of people brought up too, like, which could be something we incorporate on our trail signs or things like that, saying, this way to the businesses on the square or whatnot. Promoting Polk City more regionally. And then maybe, like creating a city personal story and promoting it, telling people why they should be here. I've also seen lots of great videos from other towns recently since you know how this all works when you start talking and thinking and looking for things, and then all of a sudden you start seeing all the ads and whatnot. For other cities that are, just promoting business development or just promoting the city itself, that looked really cool that I think that we could definitely incorporate somehow. And then last, just unify around a shared vision. Clarify Polk City's growth and like what our identity and, what do we want it to look like and what do we want it to be. And then invite some commercial input when you're doing like plan updates and things like that from developers and see what they think or where they'd like to be. And that was kind of what came of it. What questions do you have?
Any questions, council?
I have a lot. So, thank you, Stacy, not just for this and the turnaround, but, all the leadership here getting us to this point. The easy path isn't always the best one or the safest one to go down, and you didn't take that here, so, thank you for coming at us with the full picture here, good, bad, ugly, whatever it is, right? So, I'm very interested in some of the results, but when I look at the survey document, the key findings document, I should say, those first 3 points are just gut wrenching. Like 37 surveys started, 5 submissions. Some did not want to complete the survey, but were willing to have conversations about. Many were worried about repercussions should they complete it. I don't know that I've encountered anything that's as damaging as that statement in my time. So we have to take this as serious as, pardon the expression, but as serious as a gunshot wound on, whatever environment has led us Because you don't say that if people are being treated the same or people are being treated fairly. That comes from a bad place where people are not frustrated with requirements. They're frustrated with the real process versus the stated process. So I don't know how to unpack that completely. I think we have to have somebody from the outside do that. I know the audit on the process was referenced, but this is, again, thank you for delivering it, but this is tough news to hear, and we've got a lot of work to do, in my opinion. Because if these are the business owners, the lifeblood, the people that are investing in our town, and this is what they're saying,
And it's hard. I even think that like Polk City's come a long way. Polk City's changed so much in just even the past 2 years. And so I think that there's some of that is probably from, the past or people who've done business before, but it's good to like acknowledge the environment and figure out how to kind of mend those.
some of that may come
Relationships.
from access to grind, may from bad situations, but I mean, to reconcile that with only 5 willing participants out of that number. So I'm not trying to beat anybody up, but I really do think we've got to take some medicine here and really honestly, for the first time in a while, look at where things are at and make changes.
So how many times did you send the survey out? When you only got 5 responses, did you send it out again and again with a postcard?
I sent it out, emailed it out again and again, called people, and I had even people who, what I don't know how often it went out is when people were talking about it, I said forward it, or here's the link. So I'd like text the link or have people forward the link so anybody could fill it out. There was just that big worry about remaining anonymous. I sent it from Constant Contact, so people were worried about that too, like if they're in our database, if it would show up. It didn't, unless you put your email address in there, so kind of reassuring people about that too, but
And even your
Not several
your
times.
reassurances didn't convince people to fill out the survey?
apparently not, no.
So you got 5 responses. You sent out 33 surveys. How many people of those 33 who didn't fill out the survey then talked to you on the phone?
And that I don't know who opened it or how many people, or who started them, right?
Would it be
So
less than 10, more than 10?
maybe, I can't tell you who's clicked on the link to open the survey, I don't.
So really,
It could've
you
been-
don't
it could've
know.
been the same person opened the link 5 times, like I don't,
Yeah, you don't have that.
know, yeah.
Yeah.
But it would be helpful, so there were 5 submissions, but then it sounds like you had some conversations as well. Do
Yeah.
you know roughly how many conversations you had, just as we're putting context around some of this?
Probably like 15.
Okay.
It was a decent number of conversations with people. It was really good too, because it kind of opened up, there are people that I haven't heard from since I started, that were kind of like against Go Polk City and what we were trying to do, that opened up and have been calling me and having conversations and starting to do things. So that's been nice too, a little.
And was some of what went into your presentation, was that strictly survey responses, or that was also from your conversation?
Also from
Okay,
conversations,
good.
yeah.
Because go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, so again, I appreciate all the effort you put into this. However, in my opinion, this is a little ambiguous and leaves room for interpretation on things. When you use words like many, right? Many could be 2, many could be 32. I agree with Rob's comment. If there is an issue, right, that someone is too afraid that there's gonna be repercussions, however, you don't provide us context on what that is, right?
Right.
So,
And I don't know what do they mean by repercussions, right?
well, I think
don't-
we should have probably, you could have had those conversations, but the survey should have reflected upon the result of the survey, right? Or this document.
Correct. So what he's saying is the results of the survey should have been what you
Well,
directed your
or
comments
been a
on.
little bit more precise on what we are looking at here, right? Like I said, some of these things, these comments just seem very ambiguous on even when you look at, I had a question for you, Stacy, about like your graphs. Was your graphs based on the 5 respondents?
Yep.
Or was-
Based on the 5 respondents.
Okay, so like on the third graph here, when you have it broken down, you had 5 respondents. There's no context on this graph, like what does economic development mean to you? So did people have multiple choice? How was that?
They did, they had,
So again, I think just putting a little bit more context, a little bit more descriptive, just information in this report would have been a little bit more beneficial, at least for me.
sure, and I can send you the link to the questions or a PDF or a Word document with the questions too, so you can see exactly what they were.
What did you, I mean, you just had a couple days from the closing of the survey to now. So the scramble drill that it was to get it here, I don't think this is what you're doing, Jeff, but
No,
we can beat up the messenger all we want for a tough message, or we can acknowledge anecdotal as it may be, and it is only gonna be that with 5 responses, and try to get better, or try to make excuses for why it wasn't this or wasn't that. Whatever environment is out there that is leading, even if it's a few people to say some of these things, is highly problematic, because if some people are willing to say that, I'm guessing there are a lot others that aren't willing to say it, but may share the same perspective.
So I don't disagree with what you're saying there, Rob, but to Jeff's point, some of this is vague, and what are we supposed to do about people who are afraid of repercussions? What are the takeaways here? How can we fix this? I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know what their actual problems are. If this is a problem with council, if this is a problem with city staff, if this is a problem with engineering, where are those issues that they're afraid of? I think that's the kind of information that we need. We need something a little bit more actionable.
I agree with that, and I think the only way you do that is giving people a mechanism to do that.
Sure.
And there have to, I mean, we've hired a slew of consultants for a number of other things. I have to believe that there is a group out there that can, provide the security and anonymity to flush out some of these things. I don't think it is fair to put, I don't think it's fair to put Stacy in the position to do anything more than's been done, and I don't think it's appropriate to put Polk City in that position either. So what it costs, who it is, I don't know any of that, but I guess my only point is we gotta figure out something to do here. And I don't know if there's the appetite to do that, but that would be my strong encouragement.
I did think that there were things in there that Polk City should get on top of.
Absolutely, yeah. I totally agree with that.
So I feel a little differently, I think, than the group on this. And I know I didn't get a chance to look at it. I had meetings this afternoon, but I think this is generally what we ask for. And the one comment I'm going to set aside a minute, but in general, like, we were looking for a starting point. We were looking for feedback. Maybe not everybody filled out the responses and checked the boxes and gave us, data that we can manipulate. But it opened up conversations. And I think, again, the feedback that's in here includes both check the box, mark the things, follow the path we gave you, which is the survey. But I think there's also conversational information that came out of it. So I think there are some good things in here that we can start looking into. I think, there's things that Polk City. Hopefully this was valuable to you too, to see some ideas that you can run with. I think we have some things that we could look at improving our processes. And again, that's what I was looking for here, regardless of whether 5 people fill it out or 20 people fill it out, whether I have like a theme is that we could maybe relook at some of our processes, look at some of our communicate, we had some pieces and maybe there's not enough to really drill in as much as we want. We might be able to, work through Stacy and say, could you follow up with some of these? And, but again, I think this is a starting point. I do think it is a little concerning that people were afraid to respond because of retaliation. And I would love to get to the bottom of that. I don't know how we do that. I don't know, paying a lot of money to get somebody else to do a survey and really push them for that information gonna make them feel more comfortable.
I think like typically what makes people feel more comfortable is clear communication and just, knowing the processes and how things work. I mean, a lot of businesses that we have in town are small businesses. They're not like big corporations that are doing, business in multiple places, or, their one business is here, so they only know what they know from their experience here. And if it was frustrating to them, it could have been frustrating to them anywhere. But I think that having just open communication about it, or feeling like they can have open communication about it, would
So
solve a
what,
lot.
but what does that mean, right? So trying to understand what that means, because again, that can be relative to many people, right? Depending
Right.
on if you're a local business owner or if you're a big developer. So I agree with a lot of what you've said, Mandy. Just trying to figure out what the next steps are. And Rob, I'm still on page with you, and even what Mandy said, if there's someone that's afraid to respond due to repercussions, that's a big issue. I do also want to say that as one of the services that our chamber currently provides, that we fund them for, is economic development. I saw a lot of things here that I felt like the chamber could pick up and run with, right? Opportunities that
Yeah.
fit your wheelhouse completely.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree, Mandy, with your perspective, other than the point of, I forget how you phrase it, but spending a lot of money on a consultant. We have no idea how much.
Yeah,
And-
yeah,
and
yeah.
Quite
We
honestly,
don't.
I'd like to know how much we've spent on consultants to this point for various other things. So, I don't know, this to me is, again, it cannot be fixed internally, in my opinion, cannot be identified internally.
I don't think we have enough information. I think 5 responses is 13% of the total you sent out. That's not enough. That's a poor sampling. And even if you take into consideration what people were afraid to respond, I have a hard time believing that. And then to take the information from 5 answers or 5 people, half of which own businesses, we don't know what their problem was, just that they checked a box and said they don't like something. Well,
Right. And a lot of
I
them,
mean, what was it? What was that problem?
right. And a lot of them were like, oh, if I answer that, they'll know exactly who I am, which is where, then we're just, circling back to right where we started. But, yeah.
Yeah, some of that too is, we are a small town, and yeah, you're right,
Yeah.
if there's some,
If
we
it's
don't
like,
have
oh, this
100
deck
developments
was-
going on, and if somebody has a
Right.
response, we're gonna be like, oh, well, so-and-so.
No,
didn't
exactly,
like that.
right.
Yeah. But I still think, yeah, I don't know. I still think that in these recommendations here, I still think it's worthwhile feedback and things that we can look at. And some of the things, we can look into, for example, look at architectural requirements. We can assess that and say, we want to keep it as is because we think it, elevates the look here. But I mean, there's some ideas here to work through. We could take these, identify what things may be appropriate for Go Polk City to take a look at, what things might be appropriate for the city to look at. Not everything is, we may know right off the bat, like, oh, we're not gonna do that, or that's that way because, but, if there are some things within here that we could look into, whether we can improve our processes, I think that also goes back to, we are listening, we wanna hear feedback, and we care what they think, and I think that's probably somewhat of an obstacle in providing feedback, and maybe at least starting to do something with this would
But we
be,
need constructive feedback. We need people to answer us, right? And not be afraid. So I don't know how we're gonna get around that.
And that's, so I've made my point a lot, and I know I'm beating this to death, but Jeff, not you, Jeff.
Walter,
Sorry.
next one.
All due respect, I could not disagree more. We're never going to get anything more definitive. I mean, this is an answer to our question, that people are not willing to participate and respond. And I just don't think you're gonna get, for these kind of surveys, you don't get it's easy to, blow up a restaurant on Yelp or whatever when it's a 0-star thing and you move on. We're not gonna get that. And so my fear is that we have a tendency to celebrate successes, which we absolutely should, and there are a lot of them, and we should be absolutely proud of them. And we flip over every rock we can to find excuses on the other side or reasons why that's not, that negative or perceived negative thing isn't true. And pretending like we're in a different situation we are is only going to get us so far, in my opinion. And so we're never gonna get a clearer message than this, in my opinion, on some things that need to be changed. And we do need more information as to what that is and what we can actually do, because some of these things are actionable and some aren't. Some are actionable by the city, some are actionable by Polk City, but I don't know that we're ever gonna get a clearer message than this.
I think the chamber could have a strategy in regards to this. It's the 5 people who filled out the surveys. How about meeting with them and saying, okay, you said this, what did you really mean by this? And how could this be helped?
So because they were anonymous, only one person gave me their name, and the rest of them, I don't know who filled it out.
So you're kind of going though down the line of what I would like as an idea. Again, we have some recommendations. Some things are probably go Polk City, some things are probably us, some things, again, like Tree City USA policies are stringent. Well, we care about being a tree, so like some things like that, we can go through the list, figure out what's more their wheelhouse, what's more ours, some things that we're not gonna change, because that's something we care about. But then, regardless of whether they filled out the survey or not, maybe work with Go Polk City to have some sort of a roundtable event where we, whether you fill out the survey or not, help us understand some of these you may have experienced, you may have heard somebody else, but, dig into some of these, and it would probably, maybe somebody from the city or council, somebody from Go Polk City, but, to kind of get that deeper feedback. And I think I mentioned this, this came up a while back too, that one survey is not going to get you the depth of feedback that you need to figure out what changes to make. It brings some things to light, but I think engaging some additional developers to help us dig deeper and have the conversations, I think that might be something that could be of value.
I guess the only comment to that, man, is if we had a hard time getting more people to answer something that was anonymous, how are we gonna have, engage more people or have these round tables?
And I
when-
think it's something you're not gonna know until you try. Like maybe someone will be willing to step forward and say, sure, I can think of 2 that would definitely.
Well, and I kind of think too, it's how the meetings, how the invitation is framed and how the meetings are run. If it's okay, we've identified some things, help us find solutions, versus help us identify some problems. Those are 2, again, this survey had a number of things, but I think again, hey, we had this survey, we got some feedback, looks like there's some specific pieces, we're looking for help figuring out how we move forward from this, and we would like more information, and yeah, maybe not, but rather than just saying, okay, well, this is great, not many people filled it out, and now what? I don't know, I'm just trying to think of,
And I think regardless, there are
forward.
things in here that Go Polk City
yeah.
will be
Yeah,
doing.
I think there's some good
There-
ideas and
Got
things
some
that you
really
guys
great
could-
ideas from it,
Yeah.
yeah. And it led to really great conversations too, and that was a positive for me.
Yeah,
So would Go Polk City like to take the lead on this?
Sure, on setting up like a round table, was that what you're
Whatever
thinking?
you suggest doing.
digging deeper.
I mean, yeah, digging deeper, I think, sure, yeah.
Well, like we talked about, I think there are some things that are under their umbrella. I think there are some things that are under the city's umbrella as well.
Well, maybe that's the next step is
Yeah.
dividing out
Figuring out.
the chores, and you do your stuff and the city does their stuff and come back.
But I kind of think, yes, some things are theirs, some things are ours to look into, but I think this group where we want to get more feedback, it would be nice if you could engage some people, get them on board. But there might be value in, 1 or 2 of us participating in the conversation to hear it firsthand. If that's going to be helpful, if that's a barrier, then, you know, you
Right.
could relay, but again, dig deeper on some of these specific pieces.
If you want to follow up, by all means, do what you feel is prudent. We could be stumbling onto the impetus for why we are in this situation when somebody provides mixed feedback and then you bring them in and say, what did you mean by this? And beat them up for what they said. That's kind of the environment that some of these people are describing where they're not willing to come forward. So
Well,
I get that it's frustrating and it only tells us half the story, but
no, I
how
think,
you do it matters.
I think we have a story here, you know, and so it's like, help us, you know, yeah, whether you filled out a survey, whether you didn't, whether you have specifics, but who's willing to help us figure out what we really need to dig into and the best ways to move forward.
Okay, well, we have 2 items on the agenda, so we've got to bring this to some conclusion. I guess the conclusion is you're going to look at some things and start there, and then we can move on and see if we need to look at doing the same thing on the city side.
May I suggest that we agree that these 5 steps with the sub-items are the items that we're gonna focus on, and then we can divvy up which ones we think, rather than not say it. I mean, I don't wanna assume, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I'm in favor of these items you presented to us be our starting point, figuring out which ones need to be in the city's well house, which ones need to be
Like I
in.
said too, they're like ideas, like
Yeah.
you were saying, like if architectural requirements, they look great because they do, and that's not something you're gonna change. You know, it was just a comment, so that's, you know,
It was
I
brought
guess
up, it was,
decide
and
what's
then we can
important.
help
Right.
better explain it too, if that's a thing, you know, so that you know, yep, that's important to us because.
yeah. I think that sounds good.
Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
Let's move on to item number 2 on the agenda then, which is sidewalk repair program discussion. Chelsea, you're leading that, correct?
Yeah, just give me a second here to pull this up. Do you all have the handout? Let's see, maybe I clicked on the wrong thing. I would like to go over the handout that I prepared for the work session and then the exhibit. Do you all have that in front of you? Okay. So I think this could be a relatively quick discussion item tonight, but if you all recall, last year we updated the city ordinance related to sidewalk liability. If you recall, this was an Iowa Supreme Court case. It was Bankers Trust versus the City of Des Moines, which transferred or shifted the liability from the abutting property owner to the city governments for sidewalk liability. This superseded a 2014 decision. So we've been talking about this. I think we made this change back in August of 2024, but some of the city staff members have been meeting and talking about implementing a sidewalk repair program. So this seems to be a common practice that some cities are doing to kind of get ahead of liability issues or possible liability issues. But what we would do is we would like to take an inventory of all city sidewalk throughout the community of Polk City and determine what sidewalks need to be repaired. We would then send notices to the abutting property owner that they would be responsible for repairing their sidewalk, and we could give them a timeline of how long they would have to repair the sidewalk. But that is kind of where we're at. We've been talking about implementing a program. We have a draft of the program. But what I'm looking for from the council today is before the city staff goes and takes an inventory of sidewalk, which might take us a couple of weeks to do, because our Public Works Department is literally going to walk all sidewalks in the community and kind of rate or identify issues. I need to know if this is something the council's interested in. I'd like to be proactive and make sure that we're not wasting, city staff time on taking an inventory. Once we take an inventory, we'd like to present that inventory to the council with a proposed program and kind of talk through some of the main items that need to be identified in that program. So that is kind of a quick outline. There is an exhibit, and there are 6 different types of sidewalk deficiencies that we would be looking for. And we would identify what sidewalks are deficient and would need to be addressed because they could be a liability issue in the future. So what I'm looking for from the council tonight is this something you are interested in pursuing?
What if we didn't pursue it? What would be our course of action?
I would say if you're not going to pursue a program, then the liability is just on the full taxpayer base. Somebody could just, the liability would be on the full city government. In our group, we've been talking about trying to set some realistic goals and expectations. I don't think we have this expectation that if we implement a sidewalk repair program that we're going to get 100% compliance, but could we say that the program is successful if we get 25% of the abutting property owners to make the repairs? Could it be 50%? I think that the more we can reduce our liability, the better, and then we would see some sort of, we just see this program as being successful.
I don't know, I think success to me would look like the city just in general not getting sued over sidewalks, period. So I'm sure everybody here was hoping that the state legislature was going to go ahead and take care of this and pass bills that flip this on its head, put the liability back on the property owners, but that didn't happen. And if they're willing to kick the can down the road this year, I'm not hopeful that they'll pick it up and make real progress on it next year. Sadly, I think this is something we do have to do. We're gonna need to know where the real hazards are and get those taken care of, whether it's us and billing those residents for it or being able to get them to take care of it themselves in the first place. Yeah, I do worry about actual compliance and actually getting people to do it. I don't wanna have to have the city take on these projects piecemeal one by one across the city, but again, if it's gonna cost us more in the long run, if we're gonna get sued and our insurance is going to go up and up and up because our sidewalks are bad, this just isn't something we can't do.
Chelsea, do we have an estimate of actual staff time it will take to do the inventory? I know you said 2 weeks, but is that 2 weeks for a single FTE? What's that looking like?
I think we've estimated that almost everybody in the Public Works Department is going to work on this project. And should we just say 2 to 3 weeks worth of time? I don't know that there's enough going on that I don't think that all full-time employees can just do this 40 hours a week. But let's say, could we say 20 hours a week is what it would take for 2 to 3 weeks? For 8 full-time employees in the Public Works Department.
So then the question is, though, this is right now, and then time passes and they break. So then what would an ongoing plan look like?
I think we'd have to update our inventory list, and we've talked about that, maybe doing an annual update. It's gonna take the most time to start the inventory list, and then we would just add to it as necessary. But yes, it's gonna be an ongoing project.
would it be possible to reach out to, I think it was Polk County that did this last year, where they had, it looked like a build on Google Maps where citizens could go and just drop a pin wherever a bad intersection was. Could we reach out to whoever did that, again, I think Polk County, and see if that's how they implemented that, and we could turn that into something that would
Sure.
work both for sidewalk inventory as well as potholes, as well as any other hazards that come up in the community?
That's a really good idea. I mean, even if we have enough time to do that, it buys us time for Mike's staff to streamline the exercise. So if there's, again, county or whoever has put that in place, and it's an easy sell, right? It's not just the property owner that used their sidewalk, so anybody else that we can make it easy for them to say, like you said, drop a pin or whatever, hey, there's a crack here, whatever. And it would also be an opportunity to educate, because I see the impetus a little bit differently. We've got another judicial ruling that's creating law here, that maybe wasn't the design. Either way, no legislative support, judicial activism, if you want to use that term, and I probably shouldn't, but one of those causes is affecting us here, and we do have to react to it. So
I'm not sure what, if anything, this kind of program would cost us, but it certainly isn't gonna hurt us to reach out and ask and find out.
Sure.
The county and other organizations have used like social pinpoint.
Okay.
It has a GIS component to it where you can have maps, you can put pins and comments down. It's a pretty popular platform. The other thing I would do too is if you're gonna go out and look at the sidewalks, are you going to rate or rank them too, kind of like you would street pavement index or concrete pavement index? That way you can see degradation from year to year. Yeah. You rank it 1 to 5 or whatever, 1 to 10.
With the criteria that we have laid out, it's either gonna, it's almost like a pass or fail.
Yeah.
Right? But yes, there's gonna be a component where we can, if it's not to that point yet, we have to keep that in an inventory to go back and look at it every so long.
Yeah, where you got heaving from a tree, it doesn't look bad this year, but next year it could get worse.
Well, yeah, because if you don't grade it, if it's just pass or fail, you're gonna have to go back next time and review everything, right? Rather than it
Yeah, and
based
then-
on a sliding grade.
Yeah.
is this something we're gonna have to do every spring? You know, is it,
Well, yeah, I
does
was
a
gonna say,
notice?
do we have to hire an intern every summer to walk every sidewalk in town? And I mean, cause again, this is one time, but stuff happens and it's a pretty burdensome activity.
This is not an intern. This is a director
know,
of
I'm
public.
Is it Mike?
Public Works job, I think.
So,
It would be our plan, we've talked about it a little bit, but, you know, I don't know if it has to be done annually, that was discussed, but, you
Yeah.
know, as long as you have that plan, 2 years, it could be 3 years, but we thought annually to get this stuff going now would probably be good.
Yeah, and then does the notice buy us some time from a liability standpoint? Because I don't want to overreact to the implications of how this could affect us for lawsuits. I'm concerned about the insurance perspective a little bit more so. Lawsuits, you know, slim chance, but you know, a big time effect. But you know, if we identify something, pass that along to the responsible party, at least at this point, to make the repair, give them enough time, no idea what that is, to make the repair, I would think that puts us in a relatively defensible spot. Now, we can't do that for years, and, you know, we've got a huge crack somewhere, and well, we gave them a notice 5 years ago, and there's not, like, that's not gonna work, but I would hope that the documentation of this would give us some perspective, and then
Will we have all those details in the program that you're gonna recommend?
I would like to, yeah,
Okay.
I'd like to gather inventory, and the next time we bring this to you, I'd like to have like a full program with what we're proposing. There might be a few things that the council needs to discuss within that program, but that would be our goal.
With like expectations on repair timing and stuff like that?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm hearing from the council that you're interested in a program and you would like to see an inventory list.
Yes, sorry to make more work for you, Mike.
Let's just get everybody, yes, 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 yes,
Yes.
Okay.
Says we have to.
All right, yes,
Not want
you're
to.
correct.
Okay, we will begin working on that and we will bring that back to a work session within the near future.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right then. Nothing else on that topic. That's, we'll move on to item 3, which is adjournment. And I'll ask somebody to move to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Adjourned until 6 o'clock. Thanks, everybody.